Hi, fellow citizens. This video is about the special features in the 16 books on critical thinking in U.S. history. And these are books by a teacher for teachers. So the special features are, there are many critical thinking skills in these books, not limited to just evaluating sources. I'm going to go over each one of these. Direct instruction on each skill. 3 levels for most lessons for flexibility for teachers, suggested answers, US and world context for many or some of the lessons, animated diagrams, and it converts historical scholarship into classroom-ready lessons. The critical thinking skills are evaluating the reliability of sources, which many other programs do. And the way I do it is a little different, but I respect them. That's fine. But it also does analyzing cause and effect, recognizing our own confirmation bias, identifying conspiracy theories, and evaluating analogies. There's another video on how I do each of these skills. So you want to look at the one that says skills to look at that. In terms of direct instruction, each of the books starts with a guide to critical thinking. There's a quick guide you see up at the top and a more in-depth guide with more help for how to do it. If you look down for basic research, so halfway down the page, it says APPS. That's one that we do for looking at online sources. What do you look for? And you'll see that one of the keys is the article peer reviewed. Students have no idea what that means, most students. And so that's a good thing to teach them. So there are 3 levels of complexity, length and complexity. And for teachers, this gives them flexibility. So you want to do something on the causes of the American Revolution, you're in that unit, you can pull out the lesson on the TAC, do it at level 1 and do it in 5 minutes or 8 minutes as a warm-up activity, but you're also doing critical thinking. They tend to be shorter, as you can see, 1 to 2 paragraphs. Readings are shorter. The amount of time you spend on it might be shorter. There's guideline reminders and tend to be fewer variables. Variables meaning economics, political, geographic, demographic. So those kind of variables, it tend to be fewer variables in level 1. Level 2 is a little bit longer and takes a little bit longer, although you might be using it with better readers, so they might be able to read faster. There are fewer reminders and there's more variables. Level 3 is in depth, in some cases 1 to 2 pages per interpretation. It could take a whole class to discuss parts or all of it. There's no reminders and there's more variables. And these are useful for heterogeneous classes. So you could have everybody doing a problem on how well the Tea Act is connected to the American Revolution, but some of the students are reading at level 1 and other ones are doing level 3. Some have more knowledge than others, but all of them are discussing the same topic, and that's really helpful. Everybody can do critical thinking. Some people read better than others or faster than others. So this allows teachers the possibility of using different levels with in the same classroom. In terms of suggested answers, this is from the American Revolution. You see up in the left-hand corner, it says what the unit is. So here you have source A, and it says possible answers. The author is not an expert, and that's one of the variables. Quora's reputation is not important, but you see number 3, this is not a peer-reviewed website. So here the students are getting practice on the direct instruction of how to do this. P is one of the things they're looking for. Is it peer-reviewed? They're not going to remember that without some practice, and this sort of thing allows that. So there's suggested answers for each of the lessons. U.S. and world context, again, this is now Revolutionary War. Some people argue that the French help for the Americans was a key factor in the Americans winning the American Revolution. Well, one of the things that we try to teach students is when there is an argument like that, say, well, is it the same in other cases? What about other colonial revolutionary wars? So this um, lesson picks out some other revolutionary wars. And so, for example, Peru, Haiti, India, and the Philippines, and says, was did they have outside help? And if they did they win? And if they didn't, did they not win? So what we're trying to do is get students to, when they get a cause and effect, say, well, wait a minute, what about similar cases? If it didn't work in other cases, then there's something else involved in this case. Maybe foreign support isn't always the best. So you're getting students to think about these arguments. This is another one on the Revolutionary War. Question one, based on this chart, what are the three most important causes of colonial wars for the colonists to be successful? And if you look down at the where the red arrow is, rebels have better leaders. So we know Americans had George Washington, who was a, a great leader in a lot of ways. It's complicated, but and you can see that in each case. So Peru lost; they didn't have good leaders. Haiti won; they did have a couple of good leaders militarily. India lost and they didn't have good leaders, so, and Cuba and so on. So it looks like that's an important, that kind of strengthens that argument. If you then look at the one at the bottom, home country has representative government. When they have representative government, are rebels more likely to be successful because the home country is divided. They have people criticizing within the home country. But here, if you look at India, go down to the bottom, they were not successful, but Britain did have a representative government. So maybe that one isn't as important as you might otherwise think. This is the rest of the chart, and I had done research on um, rebellions in Africa. So there's a number of them in Africa in the where you can look at what happened there and compare. So here students are looking at the world context. Another feature is use of diagrams. So again, on the Tea Act, there are three arguments, all saying the Tea Act was a important cause of the colonial independence, and yet they have different explanations, and students have to pick out which explanation is best. So here, the Tea Act, green arrow to the Tea Party, they connected it, green arrow to the coercive acts, connected, and then there's a question mark. They don't connect, as it says there, doesn't explain how the coercive acts connected to the colonists declaring independence. So that one's weak on that explanation. Visual diagrams help visual learners. 70% of people are visual learners. So a lot of students are going to benefit by seeing a diagram and walking through that diagram. And that's a feature of these materials. And it has interpretations. And that's, I think, unique in the sense that students are going to see, wait a minute, historians disagree. So on the Salem witch trials, they have two at level one, two interpretations, and they can look at those and evaluate them. There's some evidence in them, and then they decide which of the views is stronger based on the evidence and the arguments. And they also realize that historians disagree, just like people today. Reasonable people disagree, and you have to sort of work at it. It brings the excitement of historical scholarship to students. And then there's scholarship. So there's a number of slides here. So on the Salem witch trials at level 3, there are 4 interpretations. So the ministers are at fault. No, the town was divided. No, there was rye bread and people flipped out. Or there was a war going on. There actually was an Indian war going on. And so these are actual books. Marion Starkey, Boyer and Nissenbaum is one of the most famous on the Salem witch trials, Mary Beth Norton and Emerson Baker, who's a professor at uh, local college at Salem State. So they're getting these interpretations in a short form that they can actually deal with. On the American Revolution, you have on the three interpretations here that it was the French Indian War was the main underlying cause. No, it was economics. That was really the key. No, it was ideology. It was belief system. And students can't read these books, but they can read the interpretations. And what does that look like? Well, on the Constitution, uh, on the top left there is Charles Beard, which is one of the most famous interpretations in American history that the Constitution was written for economic reasons. They can't read that. You don't have time to have kids read whole books on the Constitution, except for the Constitution. Um, but you can, here, you can have them read, in this case, what is that, 3 paragraphs. That's it. That's from the, so at level 2, it's much longer. Level 3 is 2 pages. But they can read that somebody out there thinks that economics was important. And then that's interpretation B. And then interpretation C is Forrest McDonald, which is a refutation of Beard's theory. And you that's only the first paragraph. It's about 3 paragraphs long. Students can read these and they can evaluate them. The important thing is the evaluation. Again, there was another interpretation A here, but that's what Beard was refuting. I wanted to show you the well-known interpretations. Okay, on slavery, we have Stanley Elkins, and that's interpretation A. He's got his theory, and there's a lot of really interesting arguments and evaluating evidence in this interpretation. It's one of my favorites to do with students. And then Time on the Cross, Fogel and Engerman using computers to evaluate mounds of information, and they have their interpretation, which again, very, very interesting. On level 3, there are 4 interpretations. So students get these various interpretations written at a level they can understand, but still doing the critical thinking. And that's really important. And on the War of 1812, the students are writing interpretations based on information I got from the books, 2 of which are on the left there. So they just get this, and they get a chance to see that writing interpretations is partly about selection. What is it you think is important? The scholarship also goes to bibliography. There are annotated bibliographies here, and so they're looking at teachers could find this very useful. I'll follow up and look at this source. In the case of the colonial book, there were over 100 sources that I used for the 10 lessons. Each book has 10 lessons. So to recap, there are many critical thinking skills in this. Direct instruction, 3 levels for flexibility for teachers, suggested answers, US and world context for some lessons, animated diagrams, and converting scholarship, historical scholarship into classroom ready lessons. So thank you for watching.